have you ever wondered if the walls of a house could talk, what secrets they might reveal? Picture this, an old abandoned house cloaked in shadows, its silence echoing tales of the past. It's a curious fascination we humans have, isn't it? These haunted houses, they incite a strange blend of thrill and fear, sparking our curiosity, igniting our sense of adventure. They're more than just decrepit structures, they're silent storytellers, holding secrets within their weathered walls. In the depth of such places, there are stories that are waiting to be uncovered. In the heart of the city, there stood an old mansion, known by locals as the House of Shadows. This was not just any ordinary mansion. It was a towering edifice, a relic of a bygone era. Its once grand facade was now marred by the passage of time, its walls weathered and stained, its windows broken and boarded up. The once vibrant gardens were now overgrown and wild, a haunting testament to the neglect it had suffered. The House of Shadows had a history as murky and ominous as the shadows that clung to its walls. It was built over a century ago by a wealthy family who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, leaving the house abandoned. Since then, the house has stood silent and empty, a ghostly presence in the city's landscape. But the house was not entirely devoid of life. It was said to be haunted, with locals whispering tales of strange occurrences, unexplained noises in the dead of night, shadows moving in the empty rooms, a chilling breeze even on the warmest of days. These tales were dismissed by many as mere urban legends, products of overactive imaginations. Enter our protagonist, a young man named Jack. Jack was an adventurer at heart, always seeking the thrill of the unknown. The House of Shadows, with its dark allure, was a challenge he could not resist. He decided to explore the house, to uncover its secrets, to validate or debunk the rumors that swirled around it. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a camera, he set out one night under the cloak of darkness. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to dance and play on the walls of the mansion. The wind howled, as if warning him to stay away. But Jack was undeterred. He was a man on a mission, driven by curiosity and a sense of adventure. Little did he know his curiosity would lead him to a chilling discovery. As our hero stepped into the house, the heavy silence was broken by the creak of the old wooden floor. A chilling sensation seemed to seep from the ancient walls, a spectral residue of forgotten lives and untold secrets. The air held an unsettling stillness, as if time itself had become a prisoner within these foreboding walls. His eyes slowly adjusted to the gloom, revealing a grand room shrouded in a thick layer of dust. The once opulent furnishings now sat in decay, their glory faded, much like the house itself. The scent of damp wood and mildew filled his nostrils, a musky testament to the years of neglect. As he ventured deeper, the floor beneath him groaned in protest, each step echoing through the abandoned halls. The silence was oppressive, a tangible presence that seemed to swallow his every sound. It was as if the house itself was listening, watching, waiting. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the room, ruffling the cobwebs that hung like spectral drapes. The temperature dropped, an icy chill that seemed to slice through his courage. He could swear he saw his breath mist in the chilling air. A soft whisper curled around his ear, a voice so faint he questioned if it was merely a figment of his imagination. Then, a strange noise, unplaceable, echoed from the upper floors. It was a hollow sound, a distant thud followed by a dragging noise, like something heavy being moved. His heart pounded in response, fear clawing at his resolve. He considered turning back, but curiosity rooted him to the spot. He called out, his voice wavering in the silence. There was no reply, just the echo of his own voice bouncing off the cold, hard walls. The noise stopped abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence that seemed to amplify his racing heartbeat. His heart pounded in his chest, but he pushed forward, unaware of the horrors that awaited. Deep within the house, he stumbled upon a room, untouched by time. As if preserved in amber, the room had retained its original state, a stark contrast to the dilapidation that dominated the rest of the house. The air was heavy, thick with a sense of foreboding that seemed to hang like a shroud over the room. A thick layer of dust blanketed everything, from the antique mahogany desk to the ornate chandelier hanging precariously from the ceiling. Cobwebs adorned the corners like delicate lace, their occupants long since vanished. An assortment of strange items littered the room, each one more peculiar than the last. A jar filled with what appeared to be teeth, a moth-eaten doll with a single glass eye, a rusty key with no apparent lock. His eyes fell upon a worn, leather-bound diary resting on the desk. The pages were yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. Carefully, he opened it. The diary belonged to the previous occupant of the house, a woman of high society who had inexplicably chosen to live in isolation. As he read, he began to piece together the tragic and horrifying events that had unfolded within these walls. The woman had been tormented by unseen forces, plagued by eerie sounds and chilling apparitions. She wrote of a constant feeling of being watched, of a malevolent presence that seemed to lurk in every corner. The diary entries grew more frantic, the handwriting more erratic. The woman's fear was palpable, leaping off the pages and filling the room with an oppressive dread. The final entries were filled with desperate pleas for help, chilling accounts of physical attacks, and a growing sense of despair as she realized she was trapped within the house. The diary ended abruptly, but the final words sent a chill down his spine. "They are here." As the last word echoed in his mind, the room seemed to grow colder, the shadows darker. He couldn't shake off the feeling that he was no longer alone. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew out the candle he held, plunging him into darkness. The air turned colder, as if the very warmth had been sucked out of the room. A chill ran down his spine, and he felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. His heartbeat echoed in his ears like a drum, pounding in rhythm with his rising fear. The silence of the house was broken by soft whisper, a murmur that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was a language he couldn't understand, a tongue that sounded ancient and foreign, yet terrifyingly familiar. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that filled the room, each one more urgent than the last. They seemed to be pleading, crying, screaming for something he couldn't comprehend. Fleeting shadows danced on the walls, shapes that appeared and vanished in the blink of an eye. They were formless and nebulous, but terrifying in their ambiguity. Each shadow was a potential threat, each dark corner a potential hiding place for something unspeakable. The darkness was no longer a mere absence of light, but a living, breathing entity, a shroud that concealed the horrors that lurked within. He felt a presence, an unseen watcher in the room. It was not a tangible entity, but an oppressive force that weighed heavily on his mind. It was as if 1,000 eyes were fixed on him, scrutinizing his every move, invading his every thought. The feeling was so intense, so real, that he could almost see the eyes, feel their gaze piercing through him. His fear turned into panic, his panic into terror. He could feel the presence closing in, its unseen form looming larger in his mind. He felt trapped, cornered by an entity he could not see, could not fight. His mind raced with thoughts of escape, but he knew he was trapped in this house of horrors, a prisoner of his own fear. He was not alone, and the unseen presence did not seem friendly. As he turned to leave, the door slammed shut, trapping him inside. An icy shiver ran down his spine. The house, once merely an object of curiosity, had now become a prison, a chilling echo of its sinister past. He was caught in the belly of the beast, the walls closing in, the air growing heavier with each passing second. The unseen entity, formerly a mere specter on the edge of perception, was growing bolder, more hostile. The temperature dropped sharply, his breath becoming a visible fog in the freezing air. A sense of dread filled the room, the kind of dread that makes your heart pound and your palms sweat. It was the feeling of being hunted. He ran for the stairs, but the house seemed to twist and turn, fighting his escape. The once familiar layout was now a labyrinth of shadows and fear. Every door he tried was locked, every window barred. The house was alive, it was watching, And it was angry. He was a mouse in a maze that shifted and changed with the house's malevolent whim. He returned to the front door, throwing his weight against the solid wood. His pleas for help, his screams of terror, were swallowed by the oppressive silence of the house. As he pounded on the door, a chilling whisper echoed around him, "You are not leaving."